Well, it has been a massive year on so many levels in the startup and capital raising sectors. And equity crowdfunding is no exemption after another bumper year, up 79% on 2020, with a total of $69 million raised in campaigns. Crowdfunding platform Birchal has contributed 77% of that total, and to tell us more about what he's seen, we welcome Matt Vitale, our Startup Daily regular, into the studios here. Matt, great to have you in person on the Startup Daily show. Congrats on an extraordinary year, a whole bunch of records. What really stood out for you in 2021?
Oh, look, a range of really positive themes. We've seen a lot of professional investors invest through crowdfunding this year, which was a feature that we observed in the UK market as that grew. And as you mentioned, records falling. Thrive earlier this year with 3 million, and then just a couple of months ago, ZeroCo, the first company to hit $5 million.
Yeah, absolutely incredible numbers. Montu, another one, $3.5 million in 2 days. 5.5 million all up in 2 offers. Why the appeal? Because I'm going to run devil's advocate on this, of course, for the founders, and I can see why someone like Xero would really want to be engaged, but you end up with quite a big shareholder book when you're a startup. So what is it about crowdfunding that is the preferable alternative to perhaps talking to a VC or finding an alternative?
Yeah, look, a few comments on that. They're not mutually exclusive. So as we've seen with, first with Thrive, some significant family offices and VCs investing in pretty much about half of that offer, and then ZeroCo with SquarePeg investing essentially $6 million on the same terms as retail investors. It is just another mechanism for raising capital. It's not to the exclusion of venture capital investors. But the point about having a large register of shareholders is really that, for companies that this is perfectly suited for, they view that as a really key positive.
Now, one of the other big things that happened, landmark moments this year, was the first ASX listing for a crowdsourced funding company, Activated Nutrients, which is bio on the ASX. It raised in 2019 6.8 million pre-money, IPO'd at 40 million, astonishing transformation. Is that trend really going to accelerate over the next couple of years, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Look, the point of equity crowdfunding is it is a regulated environment for raising capital, and it is great preparation for a lot of companies that see in their destiny raising in a more heavily regulated environment like ASX or other things. So you're going to see these companies that are much better prepared at raising under a disclosure regime, but also engaging their shareholders as well in a much more sophisticated way.
It has been kind of remarkable on so many levels, as we mentioned earlier. Just a couple more of the numbers. Of those investments, 69 raised, that's 137% increase on 2020. And we know that 2020 was a torrid, uncertain year. It's still astonishing. And then 84 successful offers, which is up 75% as well. Do you see those sorts of figures continue to accelerate in 2022?
Yeah, absolutely. We feel that the trend is we're more than doubling year on year, and we expect that to continue at least for the next few years. But the really interesting thing is what is next for a lot of these companies. And this is where, I suppose, as a platform, we're really excited to be involved in the lives of these companies as they move on and do more sophisticated and more exciting things.
Well, speaking of sophisticated, that's one thing I want to get to, because you were identifying earlier that increasingly more wholesale investors are coming in and being part of these crowdfunding campaigns. For retail investors, it's a $10,000 cap. That's as far as you can go.
Yep.
Do you think there needs to be reform on that front? Because when I talk to investors and angel investors and many others who maybe don't have their sophisticated investor certification, but certainly have enough capital and want to make decisions. Do we need to raise the bar on that? Has it been a little bit like the dole, too far for too long, too low?
Look, I think the 10,000 for the CSF regime, the setting is probably about right. My view is that, to have a sufficiently diversified portfolio, that is adequate for most people that don't meet the wholesale investor test. I've heard some of the commentary in the market about revisiting the wholesale test, for other types of offers, but I think that kind of fails to recognise that we do have a regime now for retail investors to get access to these opportunities. And that's probably the most exciting thing about crowdfunding, is that for the first time, this asset class is being offered to a national audience of investors.
Well, and another great example of that was what happened with ZeroCo, where they kind of capped it. I think it started out at 5,000. Within sort of an hour, it was down to 2,000. And I think he finished the campaign at $1,000 maximum investment each, just to ensure he could maximise people who wanted to be engaged.
Absolutely.
What does your data tell you in terms of putting that particular one aside, because it was deliberately skewed in the end? What does your data tell you about retail investors and how much they do put into campaigns?
They are investing smaller amounts, and I suppose this is really encouraging. Taking a platform view is that people are actually taking a diversified approach. And look, that's the conventional wisdom with investing. You don't put all of your eggs in one basket, and this is a risky asset class. And I think as people become familiar with it, we have more data and more results, a diversified portfolio approach will prove to be the winner.
What do you think we're going to see emerge as trends or themes in 2022? I mean, we know that food does well. We know that consumables on a range of areas are quite popular with crowdsourced funding. Nonetheless, we've seen some really interesting ones with SaaS companies, with fintechs who have also got involved in CSF. Is there a particular area that you think will really start to sort of burst out of the gates in the coming year?
Yeah, look, I think fintech has probably been somewhat underrepresented when we consider crowdfunding regimes around the world. But it is very pleasingly quite broad, and I suppose that's as it should be. Fintech, medicinal cannabis continues to be really strong, but it is across the board. I think the pleasing thing is more and more companies that don't have a product or service to an end consumer are having success with crowdfunding, because automatically your mind would run to craft brewers and all of these types of campaigns that do really well. But I think the really exciting thing is us being able to do offers for things that people don't think would be perfect crowdfunding candidates.
I do want to ask you, because I can imagine you have a lot of people approaching you for campaigns. Are there people you turn away, and what are the reasons? What are things, if I am a startup founder, I'm thinking about this, that I need to think about, that I need to be prepared for before I come and talk to the Birchals of the world?
Yeah, look, we don't have any hard and fast rules of companies or industries that we won't work with, but we do like to work with companies that we feel we can actually add value to. And as an example, there might be, we've been approached by some junior explorers in mining industries and so on. Our campaigns, the way that we approach things, we build a natural audience for an offer through digital advertising. So sometimes we feel actually, we don't really have a lot to add to this process. Where we do get really squirmy, I mean, to be frank, we sit in the office and a show of hands, and we just have a chat as a team. It's we don't have any hard and fast rules, but we kind of work things out as they go.
And finally, one of the themes that has emerged this year, especially around venture capital, has been secondary market. What are we going to see in terms of secondary market over the coming year or so? Because of course, we've got a few mature assets that have been sitting there for a while, and there may be investors looking to move around a little bit, maybe reallocate their portfolios.
Yep.
What's going to happen on that front?
Yeah, look, this is a really exciting space that we're spending a bit of time looking at. The industry is maturing, as you've identified. We've got a pilot service called Birchal Trade, which doesn't require a markets license, but it allows us to operate what's called a low volume market. And we've got a couple of companies that are considering doing this next year. And then looking beyond that, it's building out a more fulsome marketplace, I think, is something that the industry will need.
All right, well, it'll be fascinating to see how that unfolds. Matt Vitale from Birchal, great to have you in. It's been a great journey with you in 2021. Look forward to following the companies as they raise in 2022. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Simon.